Can you describe that to me?
30-year-old Burke Ramsey in court in Detroit, suing local yet world-renowned forensic pathologist Werner Spitz, accusing him of defamation in a $150 million lawsuit.
What do you think happened?
Well, I think what happened, and it's, I guess, supported by evidence and seasoned people who looked at it, is that this person came into our home when we were out for dinner on Christmas night, and then waited until we went to bed and took JonBenet from her room.
I think that someone is very quiet and it goes back.
By far, the most underestimated voice and witness in the Ramsey case is that of the housekeeper, Linda Hoffman-Pugh. How often is she mentioned or shown in this latest Netflix documentary? In Steve Thomas's absence during the grand jury trial, I wouldn't be surprised if the grand jury were persuaded most of all by her testimony, because the housekeeper, who knew the Ramsey home better than anyone, famously rejected the intruder theory.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Through the housekeeper, we also come across a little discussed artifact from the crime scene, Burke's red Swiss Army knife. What was it doing down in the basement? Also, interestingly, and as I discussed in the last video, when John was confronted with the pineapple evidence in June 1998, his prime suspect then was Santa Claus, someone he felt JonBenet could trust enough to eat pineapple with voluntarily. But what about the housekeeper? Couldn't JonBenet trust her? And wouldn't making a snack be more of the sort of thing a housekeeper might regularly do for children in her charge? Didn't the housekeeper make more sense as a suspect then to the Ramseys than Santa Claus? Before we dive even deeper into this analysis, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, I haven't completed my analysis of the Netflix documentary. We still need to do the end of episode 2 and the whole of episode 3. So watch this space for more analysis on that. If you're finding this episode worthwhile, interesting, meaningful, if you've never heard some of the insights, thoughts, information before, please do show your appreciation. You can hit the like button, you can leave a comment, but of course it would be appreciated if you hit the thanks button. And let's get started. So why was Santa Claus the suspect of the moment in June 1998 and not the housekeeper? Well, it would make sense not to have the cops sniffing around the housekeeper too much. Why? Well, because of the amount of inside knowledge she had, not only about them, the Ramseys, not only about JonBenet, but about Burke as well. It actually seems as if 9-year-old Burke and the housekeeper were often at loggerheads, and that wouldn't be unusual. 9-year-olds are often very active and messy, endlessly building toys and leaving toy debris all over the place. I know I did. And there are reports of Burke leaving his Legos lying around and being particularly toy-centric, as any 9-year-old would be during the Christmas of 1996. One interesting symptom of the housekeeper's intimacy with the home is her knowledge of one of Burke's less-known hobbies. Yes, it is an unusual one, whittling. There's a fascinating, if obscure, article published in Boulder's local Daily Camera newspaper in early August 1999. Very interesting timing as well. It was just 1.5 months before Alex Hunter proclaimed his insufficient evidence verdict. This is an excerpt from the article. That knife showed up where JonBenet was, the housekeeper said. I would stake my life that an intruder wouldn't know to get that out of the cupboard. Someone took that knife out of the cupboard where I put it. One detective who worked on the case and was familiar with Hoffman-Pugh's theory said it has merit. I think it's a legitimate area of concern that she has pointed out, the unnamed detective told the Denver Rocky Mountain News. What are the odds that the unnamed detective in question here isn't Detective Steve Thomas? I also think the housekeeper is inferring that Patsy Ramsey found the knife and she took it downstairs. But there are at least two other possibilities that I think make more sense. One is that Patsy found it and simply gave it to Burke, or that Burke, becoming more and more familiar with the housekeeper's favorite hideaway places, found it himself. Going back to the article, Hoffman Pugh said JonBenét's brother Burke, who was 9 when his sister was killed, used to wander around the house whittling with his Swiss Army knife and leaving wood shavings behind. She said she threatened to take the knife away. In other words, the housekeeper threatened JonBenét's brother, right, because she was obviously getting annoyed by this. She had to clean it up. And she would take it away unless Burke cleaned up his act, and he didn't. And about a month before JonBenét's slaying, the housekeeper took away Burke's knife and put it in a cupboard over a sink near JonBenét's room. In other words, upstairs. So how did that knife find its way back down into the basement near JonBenét's body? Now, what's also very interesting here is a month before JonBenét's death, Burke was walking around the house whittling. That was what he was up to. That was what was going on in this little boy's heart and mind. Cutting pieces of wood.
Now, why would he want to do that?
And how is whittled wood relevant to the crime or the evidence? Is it relevant at all? Well, here's a question. Was the paintbrush whittled? Have a look. Look closer. Realistically, it's hard to say. On the one hand, flecks of paint do seem to be scraped off the original wooden paintbrush. On the other hand, this sometimes happens to old pencils and paintbrushes anyway. The paint flakes off. Back to the article, a list of items removed from the house after a 10-day police search included a red pocket knife that was found by a detective on a countertop down a corridor from the small room where JonBenét's body was found. So, is the knife relevant to the ground zero of the crime scene or not? Well, if the paintbrush wasn't whittled, and let's say it was picked up by the intruder, perhaps Santa Claus picked it up, well, what could he have possibly used it for? Well, how about to cut the nylon cords that were found at the scene? Because according to the insufficient evidence, those cords did appear to be cut. Let's go back to the article. Police have not disclosed whether they believe the pocket knife was used in the crime. However, the lengths of nylon cord used with the paintbrush and those found around the girl's wrists would have been cut into sections with a sharp instrument. Alright, so were the ends of the cord cut with a knife? And if so, was Burke's knife used? Did they happen to find wood or nylon fibers on the blade or otherwise near the knife? You may remember knives, that's plural, were also used in the Amanda Knox case. For example, Meredith's bra was cut using a sharp instrument, and her boyfriend's DNA was found on the bra clasp, and Knox's boyfriend was a knife nut. He had a knife collection, so it was a hobby of sorts for Raffaele Sollecito. In fact, when Knox's boyfriend Raffaele was arrested, he had a knife in his pocket. So can you see, it is important to know some of the more personal details, the interests, the hobbies of people closely related to a particular incident. And in this case, the housekeeper provides some really valuable insight in this regard. And this, of course, raises another question. Where did this knowledge or interest in knives and whittling come from, do you think? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.